and runs a business called Compelled Designs that creates fundraisers for mission and adoptions. She became involved with Eagle Forum after the 2020 election when she was eager to find a way to get involved. She creates brochures, t-shirts, and web graphics for Eagle Forum, but her main function is research. She has spent many hours researching the Great Reset and other topics in the news. I'm sure we can use Rebekah now that we know her talents, and I know God is using her greatly in these last days as she shares the news of what's to come and what we can do and what we need to know and how to prepare. Without ado, Rebekah, will you just come up and share? Let us welcome her. Take the time and not skip over, make a question and answer at the end if you like.
Thank you for having me. I don't know if you were watching, I was showing a short video while people were coming in. This presentation has gotten longer and longer because things just keep happening. And so I keep like, oh, I need to put that in, I need to add that, but now it's really long. So I'm gonna have to skip a few things. We'll stop at 8:30 and do Q&A, and then if you want, I can go back to some of the things I skipped. It's just how time goes tonight, but for the most part, I'm gonna talk really fast. That's what the feedback I get most of the time after doing this is like, she talks really fast, but it's the only way to get all the information in. So a year ago, I wasn't political at all. Like, I had Netflix and nothing else, so I hardly ever watched the news. And, well, I guess it's been more than a year. When COVID started, then, like everybody else, I was like, what's going on? And I got glued to the news. And so I was going on YouTube every day and rewatching the president's press briefings. So I saw the one where he talked about hydroxychloroquine. And I'll tell you the truth, before all that, I didn't have a good opinion of the president. I thought he didn't act very Christian, but like I said, I was believing a lot of things and not paying attention to a lot of things, and then I watched him talk about hydroxychloroquine, and it was nothing. It was like, it's showing promise, I hope it works. And then I saw the next day when the media went berserk, and it didn't make any sense to me, and they were saying, he said this and he said that and it's dangerous, and I'm like, all he said is, I hope it works. Don't they hope it works? Do they hope it fails? And so then one day on my feed, I came across an article, Forbes magazine, and it said, man takes chloroquine product touted by Trump and dies. Okay, so I read the article, and it was not about a man taking medicine and dying, even though the picture was a doctor's arm holding a packet of pills, a blister pack. Okay, but the man in the story didn't take pills, he drank fish tank cleaner. So right off the bat, I recognized they're trying to make us believe he took medication that killed him. And they're hoping that people will just read the headline, see the picture, and move on. So then I started noticing over and over this happening in all different topics. And I was like, what's their motivation? Is it just politics? What's going on? So that was my first eye-opener. So then it took a little while, but after seeing this, I started discerning the truths from the lies. I started to see the pattern in the way that they write the fact-checking. They are all the same. And I'm working on another presentation for teenagers about how to recognize lies in the media. They all give you this title like, no, 10,000 dead people didn't vote in the election, right? But when you read the actual article, they didn't say 10,000 dead people voted. They said 10,000 dead people were registered to vote. So it's little sneaky things like this. And usually it's like, this person said the lie, this person repeated the lie, then it tweeted out like this. So there's this really long, boring article that they're hoping you'll bail out on before you get to the end. So if you ever want to check and see what they're saying, just scroll to the bottom, and they said, actually, one person on the list was alive, and two lived in a different county. So a true headline would have been almost 10,000 people, right? So, but it just says false across the top as if the whole thing is a lie. So I started a little collection of all these things too, that I can, show to my kids, and I'm trying to teach them how to be discerning also. So one day I read an article about the Children's Health Defense Fund, which is Robert Kennedy's organization, and it was called, it was about the Great Reset in food, and that was the first time I'd ever heard of the Great Reset. And so I read it, and I was really shocked and worried. And so I double-checked some of the stuff on the article, I looked some things up, and that was how I got my feet wet in the Great Reset. Then I went to my first Eagle Forum meeting, which I was looking for a place to get involved, and I found a lot of organizations that would get together and talk about it, and I was trying to find one that would do something, like I wanted to get put to work. And I got involved with Eagle Forum, and immediately they like gave me lots of different projects to work on, and show up at this meeting, come to this, start this, work on that. So in one of our meetings, somebody mentioned the Great Redo, and so quickly corrected, like, that's the Great Reset. And at this point, I knew this much about it, but I thought that I knew a lot about it, and so I volunteered to come speak to her group. If you want me to come speak about that, I'll tell you what I know. And I was picturing a conference room table with 20 people. Anyway, the first group was 100 people, and I was like, oh my goodness. And he said, we don't have Q&A, so I was like, okay, I really have to get prepared. So I went to the World Economic Forum's website, and I decided I'm not going to present what I think is coming. I'm going to present only what their website says they want to do. Because one time I did, did we lose me? The light turned red. I may have pressed the button by mistake. I'm sorry.
Use some new batteries.
Okay, I have another microphone. You want me to grab it? Okay, I'll just talk loud. So, one time I put something on Facebook and it was wrong. I hadn't fact checked it and I got butchered, and I was like, okay, I'm never doing that again. I'm not gonna post anything on Facebook unless I have a link that I trust to go with it, because people will shred you. So I decided when I first put the presentation together, I'm just gonna say, this is what the World Economic Forum says they wanna do. So 90% of what's in here is straight from their own mouth, or I clicked on a link on their website that took me to another website. And so tonight I just want to go over the research that I discovered and kind of show you how these pieces fit together. It makes a lot of the sense of the crazy stuff happening in the world that doesn't make sense. The race riots, 3D printing, IoT, cryptocurrency, like the election, all of this actually fits together, and it fits completely in line with their plan. And the weird thing is, you can go straight to their website and read about it. They're not hiding it. And ever since I started researching it, I can find it all over the place. Like, something about the Great Reset shows up in my feed every day. And before this, I wouldn't have recognized it. But now I can see it like, oh, I know where they're going with this. Even to some of the things that are sponsored ads. You know, if you think about it outside the Great Reset, I think all the time, what would they benefit from sponsoring an ad with this except for the Great Reset? So by the end of this, I'm going to go over and show you how to recognize it also. There's a certain type of language they use, a certain type of graphic they use, and you'll start, whenever I do this presentation, like the week afterwards, people are sending me stuff, look what I found, look what I found, look what I found. And that, I love that, makes me happy, because I feel like, okay, you know, people get it, they see it now. So I'm going to skip this video just because of time, but basically another name for the Great Reset is the Fourth Industrial Revolution. And basically what factories, how they change the world, this is also going to change the world. And in the video they say it will change every aspect of the human existence, and that is not an over-exaggeration. It will change everything. So, no, I'm skipping. Okay. It will affect the very essence of the human experience, realities that were previously unthinkable. So I want to start off with scripture. Now the whole earth had one language and the same words. And as people migrated from the east, they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they settled there. And they said to one another, come and let us make bricks, and burn them thoroughly. And they had brick for stone and bitumen for mortar. They said, come, let us build for ourselves a city and a tower atop in the heavens, and let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be dispersed over the face of the whole earth. And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the children of man had built. And the Lord said, behold, they are one people, and they will have one language, and this is only the beginning of what they will do. And nothing that they propose to do will now be impossible for them. Come, let us go down there and confuse their language, so that they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord dispersed them from there over the face of the earth, and they left off building the city. Therefore its name was called Babel, because the Lord confused the language of all the earth, and there the Lord dispersed them over the face of the earth. So from a spiritual aspect, what I want to show you tonight is that what we're looking at is a return to Babel, where he scattered the people and changed their language. You can now have a conversation with somebody who speaks any language in the world, thanks to technology. And we're not separated anymore, especially with the coming of the metaverse, which is another presentation I'm working on. You'll be able to sit in a room with a buyer from Japan, him speaking Japanese and you speaking English, and communicate just fine. And what we're seeing also is man making a name for himself. So there's a movement that ties into this called transhumanism, where people believe that death is just a product of a malfunction. And so that if they can keep the human body from malfunctioning, they can defeat death. And there's transhumanism also builds a link between the digital world and the physical world. It's man's attempts to be God. I saw an article the other day where I think it was Maria Tomei. She talked about childbirth, and she said her childbirth experience was violence and it felt like sexual assault. And so a day later in my feed popped up a story about digital wombs where they are attempting to grow fetuses in this little pod. So it's basically the curse of Eve, and here they are trying to defeat it. It's the curse of death, which Christ has already defeated, but they're trying to defeat apart from him on their own. It's man's attempts to be God. And the same thing with Adam's curse, having the ground curse and the vegetation. What you'll see tonight in my part about food is all of that going digital, where man won't have to toil in his labor at all. He'll just press a button. Which is why I started off with this verse, because this is the spiritual picture that I want you to see. Okay, on the this is the plan for the Great Reset right here. This is straight off their website. This is Klaus Schwab. He's German, and he started this organization back in the 70s under a different name. But now it's called the World Economic Forum. And the people that come to this is that every president of every nation, every prime minister, every CEO, every billionaire of these giant organizations are all part of this. And so they lay out the plan right here. And so you pick one of these. So if you pick cities and urbanization, it would switch to saying that here, and all of these little lines would shoot off to different topics. But you'll see a working model of it in a minute where things move and change and they all tie together. So if you look over this, you've got things like blockchain, drones, digital identity, 5G, the ocean, biodiversity, global health, global risk, governance, 3D printing, batteries, food, forests, justice. What you don't see on here at all is anything about religion. It covers everything but religion. Now, I did find a subtopic of it under one of these when it changed. The middle pointed to one, but everything that I've read on the website talks about religion as a precursor to war. It's not favorable. So this is a video that they put out. This is probably the most well-known thing they've done. It came out in 2016. Think about what the world was like in 2016. It's their top 8 predictions for the world 2030. How could they see that number in 2016? The World Economic Forum is a handful of countries. We're hearing this one already, and we're seeing the effects of the shortages. This one's very important. Refugees. It took me a while to figure it out, but they talk about it a lot. Western values will have been tested to the breaking point. Think about our border. Think about our history being destroyed. Think about the race riots. All the Western values being broken down. Okay, the World Economic Forum is made up of 40 futures councils. There's over 1,000 members from 81 different countries. Anything on the presentation, the outline in orange is a link. It'll take you straight to the article that I got the information from. I also have a list that I can email you. It's a Word document where everything that I got straight from their website is highlighted in blue. If it came from a link from their website, it's highlighted in red. If it's something I just found in the news, then it's highlighted in green. So you can actually look and see if you want to. But I'm not going to click on it now. But if you did, you'd see all those different topics that I just showed you, and under it is a list of who's on the council. And we're talking about people that are executives at Microsoft or Amazon. We're talking about leaders of national leaders of major countries and organizations, all big important names. Okay, so the carbon tax one. We're hearing this one already. The infrastructure bill has a tax that they plan on taxing gas vehicles. They want everyone to switch to electric. And that idea is that's a miniature version of what they plan to do with everything, taxing carbon. So for every bit of carbon that you use, you'll pay extra. So that there's a tax on gas-driven vehicles if the infrastructure bill were to have gone through, and they are still working on different ways to piece this bill out, and they're already passed a lot of stuff that's in it. There's also, the way that this starts is with big organizations. So they want to start by taxing businesses, saying if your business burns too much carbon, then you have to fit a different tax bracket. You have to pay more fees. And this will trickle down to individuals as we go. But so far, 20 countries have already adopted carbon pricing officially, but there's lots of other organizations that have also adopted it. Under a carbon tax, the government sets a price for emitters that they must pay for each ton of greenhouse gas emissions. So also in the infrastructure bill, there is a tax for greenhouse gas emissions. And Republicans were worried that that gas might be applied to farming, to how much greenhouse gases come from farming or is emitted by methane gas from cows. And so they tried to have an amendment passed saying that this wouldn't affect agriculture, but the Democrats voted it down. They said, that's not what it's for anyway. You're making something out of nothing. But they didn't agree to pass the amendment. It's 100% in their plan, as you'll see. Okay, I'm gonna skip a few things. This is well, real quickly, I won't show the video, but this is a way to tax people personally. It's called the person carbon trading. And basically every person is allotted a certain amount of carbon per day. And if you run out, you can buy it from somebody else. If you have extra, you can sell it to that person. So there's benefits and punishments for using too much carbon. But in order to be able to do that, they'll have to track all the different things you do that use carbon. How else would they come up with that number? So if you stop and think about how often you use cell phones burn carbon, video games burn carbon, electricity. I mean, they have to have a way to track all that in order to have a way to charge you for it. If you go on the World Economic Forum's website, they don't always say, this is what we want, this is what we're doing. Sometimes it sounds like, oh, you know, in this country they're doing it like this, in Singapore they're doing it like this, look at this great idea. And sometimes it's not always the same idea, but it all goes back to the same end. It might be about taxing carbon, but you might see 4 or 5 different ways to do it. So how will this affect the balance of power? So oil-rich countries like Saudi Arabia, Venezuela, they will always have power because they have oil. You can't take their oil from them. So what they're doing instead to change the balance of power is instead of taking the oil, they're taking the need for it away. So if they switch everybody to electric vehicles, they have just robbed those oil-rich countries of their power and taking it for themselves. So the people that will have that power now are the ones who can produce those non-oil using vehicles or devices or whatever, which is them. And you'll see most of these car companies are part of the Great Reset. And so they're pulling the power for themselves by doing it this way and robbing the countries that are oil rich. Okay, mobility. So this is one of those things on the circle is mobility. So I covered Singapore. I'll just tell you, they're doing every single thing that's on this list already. They are the most Great Reset country out there. So if you want to find out what's going on, do some Googling on Singapore, and you'll be amazed at what's going on there. So mobility, they want to have everything switched over to electric vehicles, like I said. They've already passed laws. The infrastructure bill would require all vehicles to be electric. California's already done that. It will make private cars so expensive to own that most people will switch to public transportation or to Uber type things, which all comes at a heavy price, which is your privacy. It's all tracked by these people that provide this. So automation, self-driving cars, electric cars, Uber, and drone delivery is mobility of the future. So you probably heard about Amazon wanting to do drone delivery, which is cool. Think how fast you could get your stuff. You don't have to burn any emissions. You can have it, the next day. They're doing groceries that way. But then stop and think about the cost. What's it going to be like to have drones flying overhead all day long? Every single one of them equipped with a camera. So every time that you leave your house, you're going to be on somebody's camera. And that camera is owned by Amazon, who's one of the major players in the Great Reset. So this, if I were to click on this, you would watch a Domino's commercial. So we were just watching TV one day. This wasn't part of research, and the commercial came on. This is an automated vehicle, no driver. It's like this tall. You order your pizza. This thing shows up at your house. You scan whatever it is that unlocks it. Maybe it's your phone. Maybe it's a chip in your hand. The door opens, and you get out your pizza, and then it goes back. But it shows how it navigates around. It knows all the streets, and it can navigate around things that are in its way. FedEx is also working on the exact same thing. It's autonomous robot. This is part of the industrial revolution I was talking about. Okay, so here's a moving one. All right, this to me is probably one of the top most important topics about this, and the biggest eye opener. The Internet of Things, which is also called IoT. So when they talk about wanting to have everything connected to the internet, they mean everything. Your toaster, your refrigerator, your car, your garage doors, everything connected to the internet. And you'll see all the different things that come along with this. See, IoT is part of mobility, it's part of cars. Civic participation, being part of the government, innovation, digital communications, energy, it all comes back to this. So what is IoT? An IoT device is a little tiny chip, and it has a sensor on it. This sensor can pick up things like temperature. So if you've ever had your temperature taken with one of those thermometers that looks like a gun, that's an IoT. It can tell air pressure in a room. So it can know how many people in a room by the way the air pressure changes. It can open a door or refuse to open a door based on your digital identity. If it recognizes you or your facial recognition or any kind of biometrics like that. It can tell air quality. So there are really awesome things that it can do in the way of medicine. And this is going to make, honestly, medicine better. People are going to live longer. You're not going to find out you have cancer at stage 3 anymore. You're probably going to find out before it even develops. But once again, it comes with a heavy cost. So it can do all 5 senses and then a whole bunch of other things to boot. This is a wheelchair where it keeps up with your heart rate, your sleeping patterns, your breathing, your blood sugar. If you fall out, an alert goes to your caregiver. This is a refrigerator that knows you're out of milk and orders for you, and then it just shows up by drone. This is a lock. It's called a Smart Cube, and there's, I don't know, a dozen different companies making these right now. So basically, you could take this and put it under your desk, and if somebody were to take your stapler, you would get an alert that the pressure on your desk just changed. Or in the commercial, if I were to click on that, you'd see in the commercial, the mom goes to get her medicine out of the cabinet, and when the little girl goes to open the door, it won't open for her because it doesn't recognize her digital ID or the sensor on her. So this one shows you all the different things that are being connected off your phone. So already, like, my husband can open the garage door using his cell phone. That's a smart device. Anything with smart on it is an IoT sensor. I don't like it, I want to get rid of it. There are 10 different companies that are making IoT glasses. So there's one that knows if you're lying, if the person you're speaking to is lying based on how their eyes dilate. And each one of these will lead you to a link. There's one that they're marketing to people with autism that says that you can read emotion. But what if you're standing before Kim Jong-il, North Korea, and they say, do you love the supreme leader? And you say yes, but the glasses reveal that you're angry or scared. They already in China, if you click on this one, it's a news story that shows a police officer in China, and he's pulling people off the street who have fevers because the glasses reveal who has a fever and who doesn't. Now we're gonna watch this short video real quick. I've tried and tried, maybe some of you techies can help me. I don't know how to get rid of the ads. I've tried several different things and it hasn't worked, so sorry about that. It's been interesting though, several times in the presentation, Great Reset type things show up in those ads. Okay, so these families, here comes the mom and dad, they pull up to their house, it recognizes that it's them, and the garage door opens. It knows what time they left and what time they got there. Who came in, who came out. When they walk in, the lights come on, the oven starts to preheat, she pulls out this little device, connects it to her IV, and then she puts it on the refrigerator, and it tells her who opened the fridge, how long the fridge was open, if they got something out. No more stealing lunches at the office refrigerator. So Dad comes in, and immediately the shower comes on at his preferred temperature. It knows if the room is occupied, whether the lights are on or off. She's out of eggs. The refrigerator knows it. It sends a notification. There are alarm clocks that adjust to wake you up early if there's traffic or if the weather's bad, and we'll send you an alternate route. I'm not going to watch the whole thing, but that gives you an idea of what they mean by everything. Healthcare. So probably I know I've done this, maybe everybody's done it, the telemedicine. So you no longer have to go into the doctor's office, you just pull up your laptop and have a conversation. I mean, I got ivermectin prescribed that way. We didn't do the laptop, it was over the phone. But now, this is a commercial that just showed up in my feed one day. Ever since I started researching this, every day I see things happen. If you watch this one, you can do this now. It's called Forward at Home with biometric monitoring. The word biometric is anything that is personal to your physical DNA, your fingerprint, your facial recognition, your spit, your hair, anything like that. That's your biometric data. So she gets this box in the mail. It has one of those temperature things. It's got a blood pressure cuff, an oximeter, a pulse oximeter. And so she puts all those things on, gets on the internet with her doctor, and he says, oh, your heart rate's up, maybe take this medicine, it's gonna come to you by drone. Well, that's not happening yet, but that's coming. So her pills show up in an IoT pill bottle that will only open for her. And it will only give her her 3 o'clock pill. Which will do great things for the drug problem, but also, like I said, every little thing you do is tracked down to the pill you take. And if somebody else tries to open it or break it, an alert is sent. This is a 3D printed tattoo, and I have found several different versions of this. Basically, your nurse would print it onto your skin and tell it what to do. So look at this one. This comes straight from the World Economic Forum's website. You'll be able to recognize that. I tried to include that when I got it straight from there. So you can say, we want to do a sleep study on this person, or I want to keep up with blood sugar for this person. And all of that information goes straight to your doctor. Yeah, it'll do really awesome things for healthcare, but everything about you is now traced and recorded somewhere. Because if that can keep up with the heart rate, it can keep up with all the other things too. And that's the thing about IoT sensors. Like in the infrastructure bill, it said that all the new cars were required to have a sensor that picks up blood alcohol level. Well, that's an IoT sensor. And if it can pick up that, what are they not telling you that it will also pick up? So he didn't say it will only pick up this. It said it will pick up that. It can pick up everything. Okay, so one day on the way to speak, I stopped at this thrift store in Alabaster I really like, and they had a whole stack of 2020 National Geographics. And so I bought them all, because when I started looking at the topic, every single one of them was about the Great Reset. So this one is the future of medicine, and everything that's on this list is already happening. Everything on this list is coming, but since I've made this, some of those things are now happening. So almost all of them I got from this National Geographic magazine, if anybody wants to look at it. They also had one on robotics, they had one on the refugee problem. It's like every single month it was a different part that they were pushing. So there's an app that can detect colon cancer just by taking a picture of your eyes. There's a smartphone that charts the up and down of your gait to detect early signs of Parkinson's. There's a biochip that can do a microbial scan. So you just live with this chip. You never have to give blood again. You never have to have a blood test again. It will read it for you and say, oh, your white blood count is high, you might have infection, go see your doctor. But it can tell all kinds of other things too. I did a post about this on Facebook a few days ago that it goes way more into detail. If anyone cares to follow me on Facebook, it's Rebekah Blocher. If we don't have any friends in common, if we have friends in common, I'll accept it right off. If we don't, just send me a little note that says, I saw the presentation and where you saw it, and I'll accept it. So this is way more in depth than what this article tells about Some microchips can tell who's vaccinated and who isn't. It looks for that spike protein. It can tell if you have antibodies or if you don't. I mean, it can tell all kinds of things. Electronic medical tattoos, like the one I showed you, there's a different one talked about in here that can take an electrocardiograph, measure your respiratory rate, your blood sugar, and it sends it all to your doctor. All right, this one is now no longer coming, but is here. Toilets that analyze urine. So Rand Paul tweeted this out, trying to say, look, it spent $6 million on this thing. What a waste of money. No one's going to use it because it's got little cameras in it. And those cameras, first of all, it'll analyze your urine. So same thing. Hey, you got a problem as soon as you do, but it recognizes you. I don't even like saying it by your anal print. And since then, MIT has another one, and it recognizes by the way you sit on the toilet, like you lean forward, you lean back, or how much do you weigh. When I first read this, I just made the assumption that this would be in doctor's offices. No more taking urine samples, just say, go do your thing. But the article that I read recently, and I also posted this on Facebook, it's been a while, talked about having them in every home. You know, this is like the wave of the future. Who would want that? Okay, but part of the Great Reset plan is government-owned housing, so you may not have a choice. It might come that way, but how do you know when you're sitting on one and when you aren't? So there are also sensors in pillows that monitor brain waves, and there's a ridiculous amount of information you can learn from that. Cars that detect drowsiness, sensors that use smell prints to detect lung cancer. You breathe into it, and it can tell you. So like I said, all of these wonderful things that will do amazing things, and this is the tip of the iceberg, but they come with a heavy cost, and that's your privacy. This is med school of the future right here. I'm not going to click on it because of time. Okay, so all that leads to a smart city. So this is a city completely full from top to bottom with IoT sensors. So I covered healthcare. I showed you what a home would look like. So there's a slide coming about retail, about how this will fit into society, industry. So if you Google smart city, you'll find a ton. And I just went through a smart city yesterday. And the World Economic Forum has the top 10 smart cities in the US, and Chattanooga was on that list. And so industry, all of these problems, and one thing I want to tell you is that all the weird stuff that's happening in the world is for a purpose. Okay, stuff that it seems like, how is this happening? Like, how did we just go from pandemic and now we have this supply chain crisis coming? Well, it's all manufactured, it's all on purpose, it's all to say the old way is broken, here's the new way, right? So the way that the police are, that's broken. We need a new way to handle law enforcement. Guess what? They have a way, and it's IoT. The supply chain is broken. Guess what? They have a way, and all of it is about in fixing what's broken and invading privacy. So in 2020, right before the election in January, Trump went to the World Economic Forum, and he gave this really great speech where he said, America first, this is working great. Everything is awesome. More women in the workforce than ever, more home ownership than ever, highest income among minorities than ever. Like, things are getting better, they're getting more fair, they're getting more equitable. If you don't have a problem, you don't need a reset. If you don't have a problem, you don't need a solution. He got up there and said, this is great, you should all do it too. That was January. February was the beginning of the pandemic. And all of a sudden, we have lots of problems that need fixing. Mobility. Okay, so back to mobility. Uber is one of the partners of the Great Reset, and they have a plan for each vehicle having sensors that would let somebody know if a sick person got in the car, if they had a temperature, so that they could, do it for your own good to keep people out. But those same sensors can track all kinds of information. So, for example, did you know, I didn't know this until I started researching it, but your heart rate is as unique to you as your thumbprint. And they have developed a laser that they can point at somebody and get their heartbeat and know who they are. Find your identity based on it. It's just like picking up a thumbprint. So what if Uber could do that? What if Uber was tracking your heart rate and they knew exactly who got in and who got out? Just like the people that pulled into their house. Who sat in the car? Where did they go? What time were they there? Who were they with? Who did they talk to? Like, all of this can be picked up by these sensors. And if cars become unaffordable and we're forced into public transportation, this is happening already in China, then every little person that you talk to, they'll be tracking. So think about that when it comes to the implications for the underground church in China. Okay, so smart streetlights. This is a big one. This is a smart streetlight. Okay, it has all these capabilities. So So the lights stay off until somebody walks under it or drives under it, and then they come on. And it can tell how many people, so it would get more light for a crowd or a car, less light if it was one person. But it also can know if there has been a wreck, and it will automatically alert first responders. It has a little iPad here, so this is the benefit. They always have to present a benefit, and I'll come back to that in a minute. So the benefit here is it saves energy. Like, look how handy this is for you getting around the city. There's a security camera, which in a lot of these it talks about national security, homeland security implications for the city. There is a microphone. There's a traffic counter. How many people were here today? How many people came and went? Who were they? So what if this car has an IoT sensor in it, and this has an IoT sensor in it? That means every single car that goes under it pings. So you're driving down the road, passing these things, ping, 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 ping. Your whole route has just been tracked and mapped everywhere that you went. But not only that, what if it's not just a car sensor? What if you have a personal sensor? First, it'll start off with cell phones, then have wearables. But now already people are having chips inserted. I just did a post on this a few days ago. 5,000 people in Sweden have already done it. And so that sensor is in their hand. It shows a man walk into a grocery store with the glass cabinets that they keep Coke and Pepsi in. He tries to open the door and it won't open. Then he takes his other hand and holds it up to the sensor, bing, bing. He gets his drink out and he goes. It recognized him. So what if every person in the car had some sort of wearable or injectable sensor? Then this street light keeps up with, like I said, go back to the underground church in China. Oh, who are they with? How many people got together? Where did they meet? All of that will be known. So a smart street light can stay green longer if there's an ambulance coming through. It will sense if there are people in areas that they shouldn't be. So like during a protest, there's a group of people in the intersection. There shouldn't be people in the intersection, something's going on. It would alert first responders. I watched an example, a test run of something with the smart cameras and the smart street lights where they had a mock building burning. And so in came police officers, ambulance driver, EMT, and firemen. So the AI, the artificial intelligence, was able to pick out which people were in uniform and who was a pedestrian and who was an official. Sanitation, air quality. So this is an air quality IoT. So if the air quality is really bad around the school one day, they might use this to reroute traffic. Smart traffic lights to reroute traffic around the school until the air cleared up. This is a smart building. There's several of these in the world that it knows, like New York has a smart building. Like it knows everything you do when you pull up in your car. It knows who pulled up, who they're with. It pulls up a schedule of where you're supposed to be in the building. Only the places that you go would let you in. Your parking spot maps you. It gives, like I said, it gives you directions and schedule. There's so much that it does. So parking is one of the things that they push as a benefit, because you drive around all day looking for parking, you're using emissions. What if your car could just say, an empty parking spot over there, you could just go to it? Well, it's super awesome, who wouldn't want that? But that parking spot also knows where you were and how long you stayed there and who you were with. It tracks all that same information. Every move you make could be tracked in a city where everything is IoT. Okay, I'm gonna skip on to the next one. Okay, so the semiconductor shortage. I don't know if y'all heard that on the news, but there are two types of semiconductors. A semiconductor is a teeny little chip that goes in every electronic device there is. So your cell phone has one, your car has one. In fact, this is the reason why we see a car shortage, while all the car lots are empty and used cars are through the roof, is because there's all of these finished, ready-to-go cars that are only missing this little chip, the semiconductor. So I believe, this is opinion right here. I try to tell you when this is what they said and this is what I think. I believe that they have caused the shortage on purpose because IoT sensors are the new semiconductors. And so they're producing new IoT semiconductors. Here's the thing is they needed tons of these. They needed to make new factories. They needed to have a reason to have the government pay for all these new factories. Right now we get almost all of our semiconductors from Taiwan, which is why Taiwan is so important to us, and between us and China. It's why China wants Taiwan so bad also. So the infrastructure bill would have given $50 billion to purchase IoT semiconductors, but it got tied up and they needed this to happen now. Okay, so they went ahead and passed another bill that gave $54 billion to IoT semiconductors, and then they passed another bill that gave a 25% tax break to the makers of semiconductors. They put a new factory in California, and I think Texas got the other one. So they went ahead and moved forward with this because every part of their plan, they're gonna need so many of these. And so normally, like people wouldn't be in favor of the government giving $50 billion to an industry, right? That's their own thing. Like, we don't pay for businesses to run. But this became a crisis because of COVID and what got shut down and what didn't. There's a shortage, we couldn't have cars, and so they let us feel the pain of the shortage and then use the government to fund making more. So, as 5G approaches, the semiconductor industry must combat friction points to make the world of smart everything a reality. So Intel is the U.S.'s #1 producer. The largest semiconductor manufacturer, has been a major proponent for the Internet of Things. This is a major business. I keep telling my husband, like, we gotta figure out how to invest in semiconductors. Okay, so as I was reading all this stuff, it was right when the infrastructure bill came out. And I was like, there's that word again, because I kept seeing them talking about security infrastructure, water infrastructure, 5G infrastructure, airport infrastructure, tech infrastructure. I kept seeing this word all over this. So when the infrastructure bill came out and all these Republican senators kept saying, this is not about infrastructure, there's only 5% in roads and bridges. It's all about infrastructure. They don't understand. Like, you can pay attention to who understands and who doesn't, but who says that. It's not traditional infrastructure, but if you're gonna have drones flying all overhead, you need major infrastructure for that. You need landing ports and charging ports, and you've gotta figure out, roadways in the sky. If you're changing everything to electric vehicles, that's major infrastructure. Sweden has roads that charge the cars. They have like a middle bar down the middle so the cars charge as they drive. But part of the infrastructure bill was charging stations everywhere. That's major infrastructure. It's not roads and bridges, but it comes in all these different ways. Their plan for water, in order to track water, you have to have IoT plumbing that keeps up with not just how much water you're using, but in which parts. So a house with IoT plumbing, they would be able to know what got used out of the faucet and what got used out of the hose. And they'd be able to turn off the one they didn't want you to use. Or they might charge you for it like the carbon tax does. But it's much bigger than that, because there's a major plan for water that requires all of this to be trackable. 5G infrastructure. We've heard over and over about 5G and how it's affecting everything. So, and it's going to be everywhere. You'll hear it as it being an equity thing. Like, we're bringing 5G to underserved areas, or broadband to underserved areas, like it's some sort of charity thing that they're doing, but there's actually a big plan behind it. And it's not just the internet. You'll hear them say things like, rural libraries are now going to have the internet. It has nothing to do with that. And 5G isn't about making your cell phone faster. You really can't pull Facebook up much faster than you already do. It's a much bigger thing than that. It goes back to connecting things. So I pulled up the infrastructure bill to see what it said. Okay, 115 to modernize roads and highways. He mentions in his infrastructure bill about the smart streetlights that I showed you a minute ago. Right here it says stronger infrastructure, including smart roads, water systems, municipal transit, networks, schools, smart schools. This is happening in Alabama already. Airports, rails, ferries, ports, universal broadband for all Americans, whether they live in rural or urban areas. So you can't just get off the grid and get away from this. It's going to be everywhere. So you see $20 billion to road safety, smart streetlights once again, modernize existing transit, and then to also build more. There's going to be a major push for public transportation that I'll show you in a minute. Inland waterways, there's a whole lot about aging at home. So once again, we see that the nursing homes are broken. Now we need a solution. And who would have ever thought to put the sickest people among the most vulnerable? It was done for a reason, because we don't need to change the way we do nursing homes unless the system is already broken. So they broke it, and they have a plan for it that's going to cost $400 billion. Manufacturing, supply chain, semiconductor manufacturing. This one about airports I'm not going to cover today, but I do have a good post on Facebook, and it's pretty scary. In that particular story on Facebook, they talk about it even says that people will resist this plan. So in order to bring people along slowly, we're gonna start with smart parking, because who doesn't want that? So it even lists out in the plan ways to warm us up like a frog in the boiling water, to give us the good things first and then add as we go. Like once they have those IoTs in there for one thing, they can use them for all different things. Okay, so other parts of the plan. He talks about communities without access cannot leverage the next generation of smart infrastructure. So that's why the broadband and 5G is for everyone. It talks about investing in infrastructure for pedestrians, cyclists, and riders of e-scooters and other micro-mobility. They don't want you to have your own car. They want you to rent everything and own nothing, because your car is not trackable like their car or their scooter or whatever it is. Other micro-mobility vehicles, and it sounds good when they sell it, like, why are you paying for that car when it's sitting in your driveway? Only pay for it when you use it. That sounds good, right? But this is why. Micro-mobility vehicles, integrated technologies like machine learning, which is artificial intelligence, AI, optimized traffic lights. So there it is, that's what the money's for. This one talks about the next generation of smart infrastructure. That's also straight from his website. These are the bills I was telling you about. These are all bills that have been passed since the infrastructure bill that are about IoT in different ways. So when things didn't happen like they wanted it to, they just pieced it out. And you'll see it's being pieced out in tiny little pieces. And it's happening, it's been happening for years. I keep finding it in all different places. I'm not gonna go over those because of time. Okay, so I went to, when I started Googling these smart streetlights, if you go to the World Economic Forum's website and you scroll all the way down to the bottom, there's a part that says Our Partners. And so I started looking, and I'm gonna show you who these partners are, but one of them is Verizon. They're a big one. In fact, all the cell phone companies are, but especially Verizon. So they have a map on their website. So for every single thing I'm showing you today, there have been case studies for the last 10 years. Like I'm gonna say this is how they wanna do education, and then I'll show you 15 different schools in different countries where they're already doing it. Here we're doing, we're doing it in Kentucky, and we're doing it in Singapore and all these different places. So this is a case study. This is where Verizon, all these little red dots are where Verizon already has smart streetlights. And I'm sure it's more since I've made this presentation 6 months ago. But this is where in America we already have it. Like I said, we've got 2 cities, I think the other one was Santa Fe, on their top 10 list. So this ad came across for DuckDuckGo. I highly recommend following them because they have great information about how to hide from some of this stuff. Like if your cell phone can be tracked like this, go to your settings and change this. So they put out a story about Amazon. They, without any kind of warning, they started doing this thing called Sidewalk, which basically if you have any Amazon devices, like Alexa or a Kindle, you're automatically connected to people on either side of you, your neighbors. And so that builds a chain. So like, I used to say in this presentation, what if you had a dog collar with an IoT sensor? And the other day I heard an ad for it. I was like, it's real, I predicted it. But so what if your dog was running down the street and it was an Amazon IoT dog collar and it got too far away from your house to be picked up? But what if it ping, ping, pinged on all the houses down the street? See how that makes things trackable by building a chain? So Amazon has this Project Cooper. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but they launched 3,000 satellites into space. They're calling it a satellite constellation. And the idea is to bring broadband to the whole world. It's very similar to Elon Musk's Starlink. Okay, but my point in showing you this is that they aren't just now developing it, they aren't building them, they're launching them. That's how long this plan has already been in the works. Okay, digital identity. So this goes back to what I was telling you about the chip. They have a plan, and I wish I could show you this, but I don't want to run out of time. This is an ad by Microsoft saying how wonderful digital identity is. Isn't it a pain that sometimes you pay for PayPal, and sometimes you use your bank account, and sometimes you use Cash App? Like, wouldn't it be easier if it was just all one thing, and you didn't have to keep up with all of them, especially when the government starts taxing us on them, because they have just made a bill about cracking down on that. Isn't it kind of a pain too that you have to register your kids for soccer on this website, and you have to pay for their school lunches on this website? Like, wouldn't it be easier if everything was done in one place? This is why you all need a digital identity. Okay, but think about that. When everything you have is connected and everything goes together, these digital identities can be used as a vaccine passport. It can have all your health data, like all those IoT sensors keeping up with your heart rate and stuff, can be on there. All your money, your education, what classes you're registered for, where you work, how much you get paid there, all your retirement investments, your credit, your relationships. These are the things that were on the list in the commercial. Having it all in one place, okay, but who owns that data? Because right now, Coleman Recreation owns the data on my kids being registered, right? And the bank that I use, they have the information on my finances, right? PayPal, they just know the business I do through PayPal. So if this is all in one place, it means there's gonna be somebody who has all that information in one place. This is what all the companies want, okay? People always say, if you're getting something for free, you're the product. So if you're on a website that costs you nothing, it's because they're mining your data. They're making money off of that. So there's a whole discussion. It's one of the lines on the circle map about what to do with that data. And they're saying it wouldn't be right to give it to one company because there's an unfair advantage. And it won't work to have it split up. We need one organization that is able to manage all the data. I wonder who that will be. So there are already, this is an Associated Press article about states in America that are already using digital driver's license. Common Pass was the beginning of the vaccine passport. We're way past this now. But basically when you fly, does Thailand, is their border open? Is Argentina's border open? How do you keep up? And some countries you have to have the vaccine, and some of them you just have to test negative. So how do you keep up? It's got to all be in one place so that when you get to the airport, they can just look you up. Otherwise, it's this logistics nightmare. So the answer to that was Common Pass. When I made this, there are already 15 countries on board. Like I said, I really need to update this slide because we're way past that now. Okay, so this is just to give you an idea of the kind of technology and information. This came across the New York Post, but I got to it from a link on the World Economic Forum. So this guy was a drug dealer, and he was on the dark web selling drugs. He had a fake screen name. So they were watching him, they saw it happen, but they couldn't figure out who he was. They couldn't arrest him because they didn't know. And then one day, he bought some kind of fancy cheese and posted a picture, and they got his fingerprint from this picture. Google, this has a proprietary, these are some of, Fast Company is another great one to follow. They put all kinds of good information out. So Google has patents on all kinds of things that fit into this category. So this one involves tracking family members in real time using special microphones placed throughout your home. Based on the pitch of voice signatures, Google's circuitry infers gender, age information, for example, one adult male, one female child, and it tags them as separate individuals. It's not just those two things, okay? It's picking up all kinds of different things about you based on your voice. Once again, I guess Google will own that information. So who would want that in their house? You know how many adults and how many children you have? The company's patent asserts that every time the system's household policy manager will be able to compare life patterns, such as when and how long family members eat meals, how long the children watch TV, and when electronic game devices are working, and then have the system suggest better eating schedules for the kids or offer to control the TV viewing. Who in the world believes this is about your household? Who needs a machine to help them do that? This is not about your household. This is going to be used in other buildings and other places. So that was my opinion. I'm pretty sure of it. So more stories from the World Economic Forum. This one is about what they can get from audio. So there was a guy that was prank calling the Coast Guard, and they couldn't catch him because he would hang up before the FBI had time to track it. So they just used the patterns in his voice. Patterns in your voice can tell how old a person is, what their ethnicity is, where if their ethnicity is Middle Eastern but they were raised in Europe, like it can determine these things. It can tell their socioeconomic status, what part of town they're in, whether or not the room they're in has windows. So that guy that was prank calling them, they had milliseconds of audio, and they caught him. This one is even scarier. This is about how microbes, and this is, like I said, they're saying, look at these awesome things, how microbes can help you track criminals. Well, everybody sheds microbes. Everybody does. And so they set up a mock crime scene where two FBI agents went in and pretended to rob the place, and then they sent the scientists in to see if they could figure out who it was. Well, they did. They nailed both guys, and they were even able to tell that one of them drank more than 10 beers a week and that the other one had recently taken migraine medicine based on their microbes. So no more fingerprints are needed. Like they'll just go in and collect microbes. They'll get way information than just who was there. Okay, so this is one we're going to watch, and this one is a huge eye-opener. It's probably going to make me watch an ad again.
Meet Suvi, the magical all-in-one countertop kitchen robot. Suvi saves you time.
largest video surveillance network in the world and plans to expand it to more than 600 million cameras over the next 2 years. With the rise in facial recognition and artificial intelligence, it feels more like someone is watching all those cameras at all times.
Hi, I'm Ellie. I'm in China, and I just got busted for jaywalking with facial recognition technology.
Stations like this one are part of a new plan by the Chinese government to publicly shame citizens caught breaking the law.
If you cross the street against the light, cameras with facial recognition technology will take a picture of your face, cross-reference it with your government ID, and then post it up there to embarrass you.
But China isn't embracing facial recognition just to catch jaywalkers. The technology is starting to appear just about anywhere you can imagine. It helps make menu recommendations at your local fast food spot. You can also pay for your food with your face.
Doesn't matter whether you smile or not, even though it's called smile to pay. Even if you are wearing a wig or have a heavy makeup, it will still recognize you.
Or a mask, it can tell
It
you
even
what
has
mask.
a waste of toilet paper at public bathrooms.
My gift. This is all I get for the next 9 minutes. And then I come back again and try to get more.
Chinese tech companies are now at the cutting edge of developing new and sophisticated ways to do video analysis.
Right now we're going into Sense Time, one of the biggest companies involved in developing that technology. Let's see.
这个是我们的人脸识别的门禁，那它可以自动的识别人脸，然后方便员工进出。然后你站在门口，它很快就会把门打开。对于外来的人员来讲呢，他站在门口，门并不会打开。
So you know when someone's late?
所以我们也可以知道到底是每个人都是几点来，几点走的。所以这个呢是我们的一个肢体检测、肢体识别的一个功能。这个是我们的一个会场迎宾签到的一个系统，那它可以作为你的牌，并不需要从每次进出都需要刷卡，我们可以替代这么一个方式。这个是我们给线下做这种广告营销互动的一个平台，它可以很快的识别出你的魅力值，然后表情、戴墨镜、欢乐值、年龄以及你的性别。那相应的，它会有一个这个颜值的一个排行榜，都可以在这个后台得到。Yeah, now you are the number one.
But despite all the goofy applications we were first shown, much of the tech Sense Time is developing has serious real-world implications.
这边是我们给智慧城市、平安城市打造的一整套的系统。然后呢，这里头的细节呢，我们可以看到很多标签，包括人的着装、上身和下身的着装，然后颜色、性别、年龄。然后对于车辆，我们可以识别到3000多种的车型，这个包括到具体品牌。那这样一个产品，它叫视频结构化，它能够很好的把视频中的一些关键信息提取出来。比如说我今天要找中午11点钟经过这个路口的红色车辆，然后可以很快的把这样一些目标物给检索出来。这个是我们给这是上海外滩的一个场景，我们是给上海外滩的这个摄像头去做了一个人群的布控。左上这张图是一个原始的图片。然后同样的，我们可以得到
Okay, so if you want to watch the rest of this video, you can Google China, or when I say Google, I mean DuckDuckGo, don't use Google. You can do China surveillance and Vice for this one, but I've watched dozens of these videos and add the word Uyghur to it. The Uyghur Muslims is a group that they're persecuting right now, and like if you're a Uyghur Muslim, you're not allowed to own a knife. And so they show a butcher getting a knife for work, you have to get approval, and they etch, a laser etches a QR code on it. So if anybody else goes through a sensor and they're holding a knife that doesn't match them, they're off to jail. They're really cracking down and abusing people that live in the Uyghur areas for all kinds of stuff. Pulling them off the streets, putting them in internment camps, taking their children and putting them, they call them kindergartens. There's a great one on here, I think it's called Undercover Disappearing Muslims, I think that's it. And the lady, she is Chinese American, so she goes over there and she interacts and she comes up across one of those kindergartens and all the children are saying, China is my mother, I have no mother, China is my mother. Just like we heard Mother Russia is a breakdown of the family. So there's a really great book called Live Not by Lies, and every chapter is by a different person who survived communism and how they see what's coming in America, how we're on the path to communism. And the best chapter is about the family, because it calls the family the last cell of resistance. And so just like communism countries are completely against religion, because we recognize God as our authority over the government. And so the same thing, you're gonna have more loyalty to your family than you would to the government. And so they're trying to break down the family. And we've already seen them ask us to turn in our neighbors for not wearing a mask or being vaccinated, to turn in your parents if you think that they're, what's the word they use? It's not radicalized, but if they're too conservative or whatever. So you're already seeing this. And so what we're looking at is a digital KGB system, and it's already happening there. So if you want to see where this is going, just get on YouTube and watch these videos about Chinese surveillance. You'll be amazed. Okay, so right before Trump left office, he sued Facebook. Facebook had all these positions that they should have. The law says you have to make it available to American citizens first. If you can't find an American citizen to fill the position, then you may bring people in on a work visa to take it. Well, Facebook had filled these positions without first offering it to Americans, so he had them investigated. Basically, to me, I think it's like getting Al Capone on tax evasion. So when he did that, what he found was that they had all these citizens, all these AI PhDs from China working on it. Well, China is famous for having a firewall that censors its citizens. So when we were there, we couldn't get on Facebook. They censored that. So people had to get apps put on their phone that made it a VPN that made it look like their phone was calling from Germany, not China, in order to be able to download these apps. Well, one of the architects of that firewall was working for Facebook. And so the New York Post was the one that discovered that. That's what this article is about. And Trump had all of their visas changed from 5 years to 1 month and got him out. That was right around the same time that he shut down the consulate in Texas that turned out to be a bunch of spies. And when he shut down, the week that he shut down that consulate, 1,000 Chinese educators left the country. Swalwell's girlfriend disappeared around the same time. Okay, agile governance. So how does IoT fit in? How do all these sensors fit in with governance? So if you hear the word agile, you're talking to someone about the Great Reset. Right now, the way we have our laws is like you have to go through a process. Agile bends all that, and they do it like, oh, technology, this is what they say all the time. Technology is coming out so fast that if we had to wait on the bureaucrats to move this through the system, it'd be outdated by the time we got it, and then we'd miss out on this great opportunity. We need a way to pass these laws quickly so that people don't miss out on them. And basically, it's skipping the government, skipping the voters, skipping the process. That's so agile. So it's actually a big, broad thing. That's a piece of it. There's a lot of different pieces, and you'll hear people talk about our company's going agile. It means a lot of different things, but too much to go over in one night. But one of the other things that they talk about doing is agile governance. And so agile governance means instead of the government setting up all these rules, we want to involve people in the process. So it sounds good, like you make the laws, you're the citizens. The police clearly aren't getting it right, so let's put it in your hands, from them, not from me. So this is called self-regulation. So basically, it's like you're not going to use as much carbon if it's going to cost you money, right? So that's how you're self-regulating. So if you're not going to jaywalk, if you know the camera's going to take your picture, that's self-regulating. So they're going to start, just like with the carbon, with businesses. So if you have a construction company, you might join a group of construction companies, an organization of them, and your company might come up with its own rules, like we're all going to recycle, and we're not going to use wood because that's bad for the environment. That's the reason for everything. Instead, we're going to use these new products. Well, lo and behold, one of the people in your group of companies was burning wood behind their building. So step one is that you'd go to them and talk to them about it. Step two is you would involve the other companies, and after that, it goes to co-regulation, which in all of their examples ended with the government. So it is not really self-regulation. It's all based on rewards and sanctions. So the beginning of this you already maybe have heard of. It's called ESG, and it's environmental social governance. So right now, all the major corporations are giving themselves scores for environmental social governance. So if you hire lots of minorities and women, and you recycle, and you lowered your carbon, you have a good score. But if you're not doing one of those things that your organization decided you should, then you have a bad score. So how does this change the balance of power? Well, so Russia, for example, they have really low environmental laws when it comes to oil, but America might have really high ones. But so why do they have to? Why would a Russian oil company have to live by any of those laws? They don't have to. But if they're part of a large oil company and they want to do businesses with American businesses that are doing the ESG score thing, they would join this social governance umbrella. And so it takes the power away from the country who said they don't have to do those things and gives it to the organization, to the company that says they do have to do those things. So now who really has the power? So this is straight from one of the articles which I've linked to. As emerging technologies are shifting power away from governments towards companies and non-state actors, the traditional view of governance is also shifting and expanding a concept. So the World Economic Forum isn't just world leaders. A big chunk of it is business leaders. And I'm gonna show you in a minute all the different businesses that are on. So if they're forming these organizations and saying, oh, you wanna do business with Amazon, you gotta have a good ESG score. What business isn't gonna fall in line with that? So agile governance, when it says citizen as censored. So for example, they're in Kentucky, they noticed they had a really high occurrence of asthma. So the doctors there did an experiment which got funded by the government, and they gave them all these IoT inhalers. And so they just said, go live your life. And then they noticed in what areas of town were the people using their inhalers the most. And they found that it was in this one area, and they were able to say the air in this area must be worse, and they blamed it on this company. And so they used the people as censors. Okay, so it's the same thing for governance. So basically, if everybody is on a governance system, we're gonna use cell phones for now because this is where the technology is. You might say, oh, there's a pothole here, and you take a picture with your phone, it might ping your location, and you send it to the government. Oh, there's a nail sticking out of this park bench, okay? But then what happens when there's a person not wearing a mask? We have all seen how people love turning people in for not wearing masks. What happens if a person who's not vaccinated sits down in a restaurant, that is required indoors, like in New York, they just arrested a bunch of people for eating an Applebee's. So now, think about everybody going around busting each other, which people love to do right now. It is a digital KGB. It is turning your friends, turning your neighbors, turning the lady at the park that said something you didn't like. This is the new idea for governance. It's in your hands, which sounds good, but do you really want it in everybody's hands? You're gonna hear the word sandboxes a lot. This is a word that they use to describe, and I hear it all the time now, but where these rules are made. So, oh, we want this new type of technology. Instead of going through the courts, instead of going through the legislature, we're gonna take it to the sandbox, which basically means they have a little test run, they try it out, and then they make a decision. Oh, crime prediction. Okay, so go on my Facebook page and look up, just do a search for crime prediction, because this is a pretty big scary one. They have determined like the areas of town where they can predict a crime is gonna happen, and is there a crowd standing on the street where they shouldn't be? If you saw the girl in the video and she was kind of doing this, that is crime predictive software that they wanna use in airports to see if you're acting shady, you might be a threat, you're not getting on that airplane. Okay, so I'm gonna skip this for now, but you can go read it. This is about, this more agile governance about crime prediction. Okay, so public-private partnerships. To me, this is a really sneaky one. And this is happening right now all the time. So all through their website, I could fill up 5 pages of the times that they say public-private partnership. So basically, and this is a few examples right here. Well, this one talks about opportunities for financial inclusion will only be unlocked if the space is regulated properly and includes public-private cooperation. In their plan for water, they talk about this. So I probably will skip what I want to get to it. I'll just say this. This is the first year that water has ever been a publicly traded commodity. It got added to the futures market this year. That hasn't happened before. And right after Biden came to power, one of his first executive orders in this first crazy week of signing orders was that he put thousands of public waterways, he put thousands of waterways under public protection for environmental reasons. So it doesn't matter if that waterway goes through your backyard, if it's under federal protection. And so there was already a whole bunch like that. He added thousands more. Okay, so public-private partnership. Basically, after January 6th, when all the riots happened in DC, the government didn't have a warrant to go around and get everybody's cell phone records. They'd have to have probable cause, right? But they didn't need it because the cell phone company just gave it to them. Here's everybody who pinged off the tower by the Capitol. And then the banks, I think Citibank was the one, they handed over their banking records of everybody who used their debit card in the area. Okay, that's your private information that business owns. So for my example on this one, I think about Uber. What if Uber collects all that information about you? What if you are giving them their permission by sitting in the car? Their website says, you want to use our services, click I agree, you get in the car. So what if Uber owns all that information and they decide to sell their company to a Chinese company? Well, now who owns that information? What if they decide to give that information to the government because it's part of the user agreement? Another example is Facebook, right? The government can't legally censor speech, but a private company can if you're using their service. And it came out that they revealed that Biden was asking Facebook to censor certain people, Facebook and Twitter, and that they were doing it. So they're an arm of the government if that's how it's happening. That's a public-private partnership. The business is doing what the government can't. Another one is PayPal. They listed people who were radical. They're gonna start shutting down revenue flows of people that are radicalized. And one of the things on the list was anyone who's anti-government. Okay, I'll go over this one really fast. When I started to make this short, I would take this one out, but then as stuff started happening, I had to put it back in. Okay, so blockchain and digital currencies is a very simple explanation of how it works. Say you have a computer's mined for blockchain. They run all day trying to solve a math problem. Blockchain only lets Bitcoin only lets a certain amount of Bitcoins out a day. So the first computers that get to that, they win the Bitcoin. And that makes a block of information on a network saying, Rebekah Blocher won the Bitcoin. So then I decided to use my Bitcoin to buy pizza. Well, then there's another block, Rebekah bought pizza. And then the pizza company decides to sell that blockchain to Bob. Now Bob owns the blockchain, who invested, right? So they're all connected. So I can say, look at Bob's Bitcoin and track all the people that used it and what they used it for, okay? So blockchain is a really cool technology because it's all in a public ledger. So where our money right now is centralized, Biden can print more and mess with the market, right? There's all kinds of things the government can do to mess with the value of the dollar. But with Bitcoin and all cryptocurrencies, it's a public ledger. Nobody has that kind of influence on it, and it's all out there. So it reduces. This is one of the good things about it: corruption. Okay, so you can't money launder and hide and all this stuff because in order for one block to be erased, everybody on that chain has to agree, and that's never going to happen. Everybody would be suspicious. So the World Economic Forum. This is a list of all the different things that they say you can use it for. So one of them is food. If you're sitting at a restaurant and you want to know if the salmon on your plate is frozen from China or from a spring in Louisiana, you can look on the blockchain and see where it came from. A couple of years back, maybe 10 years back, Bluebell had a listeria outbreak and had to shut down every factory and throw all the product away. With blockchain, they could look at the ingredients, like where did that cream come from, and just shut down where the listeria actually came from instead of shutting their whole company down. And they could use the blockchain to track all the products that were made with it and just throw those out. Everything with this barcode is gone. So those are all really good things. This is the future of the supply chain. This is why the supply chain, in my opinion, is broken right now, because they want to put it on blockchain. So now, like right now, there's hundreds of Chinese ships floating around outside our ports, and there's not enough port workers, and apparently they didn't work after dark for a while until Biden changed that. And so this all this stuff is backed up. Well, some of those hold perishable goods that are just getting ruined and wasted. They waited there for months for no reason, right? So they could prioritize what's on each ship, where did it come from, where's it going. It would also help them know what illegal goods are coming in. So there is a good reason for it. But if you can do that with your salmon, if you can do that with food, you can do that with everything. That means everything you own, everything you buy, there's going to be a public ledger for it, showing your inventory, basically. So you can probably think through the different implications of that. Currency, public registries. Okay, so HR 5 was one of the first bills that the Democrats brought in when Biden became president. It's the gun bill. And one of the stipulations on the gun bill is that there be a public registry where you have to say what guns do you own, how many do you own, and where you keep them in your house. But it's public. So if you're a single mom with no guns, any criminal could look on the blockchain and know that. Or if you have a bunch of guns, the government also can know that. None of that stuff is hidden anymore. The penalty for not doing that is like, I mean, $100,000 and 50 years in jail. Like, they're really, really high penalties. There's already been people that got married on the blockchain. So in Singapore, if you want to see where this is going, you can just Google Singapore blockchain. If you go and have a baby, it automatically kicks in the blockchain and offers you what comes with that. Oh, do you want to, here's the social security number. Like, so it's called a smart contract. And this is set up on blockchain things so that when a certain thing is met, restrictions are met, it triggers a contract on the blockchain. So for example, and I think I have a picture of this coming up, farmers in Africa, they would plant a certain crop until the soil was depleted, and then they would just move to another one. And they wouldn't do anything about the depleted soil. And so it was just kind of ruining the soil everywhere. So they set up on the blockchain, this is already happening, if you don't just leave it, but you plant trees, the satellites in space called oracles will register with the satellite that there's plants growing there, and cha-ching, you'll get money in your account from the blockchain contract. It's called a smart contract. There's one right now called bit walking, and you can do this now. If you walk to work as opposed to drive, you can make $5. A lot of these wearable IoTs or implantable IoTs will be able to tell how often your heart rate got up, okay? So if your heart rate gets up to this so many times a week, well, maybe you'll get more money in your account and you'll get awarded more carbon. But there's also really, which is good for health, but there's lots of negative things. I read an article the other day about a man who had been arrested, and his attorney was trying to say there's no way he could have done it. He has a medical device, he wears a pacemaker. He couldn't have been the guy running that you saw. He's not capable. So they said, so the prosecutor asked, let us see the data on his heart monitor. And sure enough, they found that his heart rate had gone up. He was able to run, and I think he lost his case. So imagine all your IoT devices in China, the Uyghur Muslims, they're not allowed to run. It's illegal. So if they are caught on these AI cameras running, it automatically sends an alert to the main room where you saw the guy driving all this stuff, and the police are on him. Another video that I watched, an American goes over there, it might actually be that one, and they're kind of looking at how the system works, and the guy brags to her that they can find anybody, anywhere in 7 minutes. So sure enough, it was a guy actually. He gets on the subway and he disappears. He gets off in a really busy area and goes into the middle of a crowd, and he's like watching his watch, and right at the 7 minute mark, they're like, tap, 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 they found him. Okay, so imagine if you're running and your IoT device sends a signal, or like I said with the crime, when it says that they will change the very essence of human existence, they mean everything. So I'm gonna skip all of those and go to the part where in the last 2020 election was the first blockchain voting happened, and it was in Ohio. And so if you watched the MyPillow guy do his big thing that he did, he recommends blockchain voting for the future because it does curb corruption, like everything's tracked, but is it public? I mean, I don't know. Will everybody know who you voted for? Would you still vote the same if you knew you face consequences? Those are just questions I don't know the answer to. Okay, so I'm gonna skip this. That's the story I was telling you about. No, that's not it, but it's another example. Okay, refugees. I'm gonna press pause. Okay, this one got me, because it was in the top 8. So I was like, this must really matter. So I read the plan, it's like, this sounds good, I don't have a problem with this. You know, we need to help the refugees, I don't understand. Okay, but if you think about Syria, like, we have more refugees than we've ever had. The landscape in Europe is completely different than it used to be. There's parts in England that have Muslim, Middle Eastern mayors, you know, and their entire population there, and they were voting one year, no, it was France. They were all in favor of Sharia law in their area. Like, it looked like it was really gonna happen. And we see our border, you see what's going on with our border. Google border crisis, And look at how many different countries are having the same problem we are. That people don't want open borders, their leader is making them have open borders, and they're dealing with a crisis. Spain and Morocco, there's just a bunch of them. Italy. So I stopped and prayed about this one. I was like, I'm missing it, God. You're gonna have to show me, like, I really believe in James 1:5. If anyone lacks wisdom, let them ask God, who gives it freely without finding fault. Which I'll just tell you, a little step to the side for a minute. I prayed that. That's probably been the most important verse in my spiritual walk, because he says without finding fault, which means you don't have to earn it. You don't have to be living right. You don't even have to be a Christian. It says anyone who asks for wisdom gets it. And if you read in Job 28, I believe, it says, what is wisdom? Wisdom is the fear of the Lord, and understanding is obedience. So I get to a point all the time where, like, I need wisdom for this, God. I need wisdom for that, God. Or I'll just say, give me wisdom today. So I did that, and the next day this video showed up in my feed. So thank you, God. I'm going to talk through this one, but it's all music. So this refugee camp already runs on blockchain right now. They pay by looking into a camera that scans their irises. It can store a digital identity, which we already covered. It's your passport, your exam certificate, your financial records. Okay, I'm gonna skip it because I don't want to run out of time. Okay, so basically, you're a refugee. Your house got burned down. The bank is non-existent anymore. The government took your passport. You show up in Greece, and you can't prove that you're not a terrorist. You can't prove that you were a doctor in your country. You have zero money. You can't get a job. You can't rent a house. Like, what do you do next? And when I went to Greece, they were not very pleasant to refugees. So you're in a place that's hostile. And not only that, they don't let you go further. Like, it's called the refugee superhighway. You get to Greece and you're stuck for a while. They all want to get to Germany because the rules are softer, but it's really hard once you get to Greece, but that's where they come from. So you get there and you're desperate. You want to prove your identity. You want to be able to have a bank account. So what I started to learn was, and I think this is what God showed me, is that the refugees are the #1 most vulnerable people group in the world. There's 1 billion of them, okay? So the World Food Organization was giving them all a credit card to shop for food. Well, that was expensive because of the bank fees, and the plastic was bad for the environment and all that stuff. So they scanned their retinas. So now they have an ID that they can never lose, and the government can't take it. It's always theirs. They'll always be able to prove who they are. And the the Food Organization just put money in their bank account, okay? So if you're desperate to feed your family and someone's offering you money and this is what you have to do to get it, how many people would say no to that? So right off the bat, there's 1 billion people on the system if they get all the refugees. Okay, so what if they gave every one of those people $100 to spend, which they give them probably a lot more. I don't know, I need to look that up. Well, that would be $100 billion, okay? So what food producer, manufacturer, retailer isn't gonna want a piece of that? So say a company that's big like Walmart decides to accept that technology also. Okay, well that's gonna push their customers to also accept that. It's good because it starts with a giant group. Okay, so what if they did it here? What if they said, oh, you want to get food stamps? This is how we're doing it now. Or you wanna register your kids for school? This is how we're doing it now. Okay, so Biden's child tax credit. If you were approved for it, the money just showed up in your account. If you wanted to opt out of it, you had to sign over the rights to your biometric data, and the next screen wanted to take your picture for facial recognition. So you can even opt out of it without giving facial recognition. You either had to take the plan or give over your biometric data. So what if at the end of this, like for our family, it would have been a lot of money, and it could have been what if it was somebody's house payment, for example? And what if they became dependent on it? It wasn't extra money anymore, it was their house payment, and then the government decides that they're not gonna do it anymore, or they say, you wanna keep getting it, you gotta do this facial recognition thing. You know, you wanna get food stamps, this is how we're doing it. You want government housing, this is how we're doing it. Starting with the most vulnerable people group is a very manipulative way to get the system going. Okay, so this is Amazon using digital currency. How am I doing on time? Okay. So you can go to Amazon Go grocery store right now. Your sensor pings when you walk through the door, get the things you want and leave. You don't have to go through a register. There's no people working there. It all happens with sensors, the money comes right out of your bank account. Not only, and he says in the video, these are all videos, not only does it keep up with what you bought, but it knows how long you sit in this aisle, looked at that thing, it knows the thing you put back, and guess you'll be receiving ads for those things for days, I'm sure. This is an Amazon grocery cart. You put your phone in the slot when you first get there, and it connects to your Alexa, standing right in front of it. But it will weigh the produce you put in here. The cart picks up your signal. This is the grocery list that pulled up off of your Alexa device. And same thing, it charges your bank account when you're like, okay, this is what I want, press go. This is the Whole Foods stores. Whole Foods is owned by Amazon now. If you go to the one in Seattle, this is an Amazon palm reader. That's how you pay for your food, with your handprint. It's your biometric data. So this is biometric MasterCard. So look, these are all companies that are involved in this. This one, where the chip is on the back, is a place for your finger to go, and it takes your thumbprint. All the credit card companies are doing that. Digital currency. So the European Union just announced, well, this is actually a little bit old. They have announced plans for a digital wallet to have all the money in one place, private and public sectors. This is another agreement between the two. And then the US Fed has already taken up steps to develop its own currency. Not only that, there's talks about bills being passed. Like everybody, if you talk about these digital currency, talk about the currency problems in Twitter land, everybody's like, well, that's why you need to get digital currencies. That's why cryptocurrencies are good. They're not just gonna let that slide. The government is already working on a way to make people report digital currency, which is supposed to be anonymous. So they're coming up with a way. Okay, this one's pretty interesting. Agile education. So the way agile education works is that, first of all, we need to think of it as indoctrination camps, okay? So right now, all of us are in here kind of resisting what we see coming, but once our children go through the indoctrination camps, they're not gonna resist it. Send an 18-year-old off to college for a year or two, and then try to have a discussion with them and see what has changed. Okay, so somehow, a lot of them have gotten this idea that the left is the one that's fighting the man, they're bucking the system, right? They see them with Antifa and all this stuff, and they think that that's the rebel side. And so I had this conversation recently with somebody, and I said, so you got Trump on one side, who's never been a politician, who's a businessman and all this stuff, and on the other side, like trace the money back, and where does it end up? It ends up with the Clintons and like all the same people, like that they are the system. They're not the ones fighting the system, like they're the man, you know, but they've disguised themselves so well, and they've done all this indoctrination with college. Well, it's gonna start much younger with kids. So one article I read said, in the future, carbon will be a bad word. It will be kind of like, you drive a gas car, you're using carbon, you know, like, okay, how are they gonna get the future to be that way? By bringing the kids up along this system. Carbon is bad, they're gonna hear it. Okay, so there's a company in Alabama that has been going around, and I'll just let you Google this for yourself. They've been going around to the schools, okay? One day, just an ad showed up in my feed on Twitter. It said that the school in Gulf Shores just had a complete makeover, a modernization project is what they called it. So the ceilings were covered with solar panels. They got a complete IoT HVAC and a complete IoT plumbing system. And it said that this was gonna be good for STEM. So I called, y'all, I didn't really track this down. I called those people. How's it good for STEM? How's it good for STEM? That was the question I was asking. Like, what are the kids gonna be doing? And like, I was like, I don't know. And then finally I got somebody who said that they were gonna shadow the people that set up the system. Because basically you can run, with IoT, you can run the whole system with the pressing buttons. So that's, when they say the future is robotics, and they say, you'll see this line all the time, training children for jobs that don't exist yet. Okay, and they also talk about retraining adults. They have a cute word for it that I can't think of right now. But so these jobs that don't exist yet are IoT jobs. You can farm a giant farm just by pressing buttons, IoT buttons, like, oh, the soil is too dry, beep, beep, beep. You know, oh, it's too acidic, beep, beep, beep. You're running a farm. Oh, send the drones to go pick the vegetables, that's coming, beep, beep, beep. All right, so these are the jobs of the future. And they say, you'll hear this all the time, especially in the education part, these new jobs are gonna unlock creativity, okay? So I'm like, okay, how are they gonna unlock creativity if you're really just sitting and pressing a button? It's actually the exact opposite. The jobs are zero creative, zero training, and guess what? You don't have to go to college to do it. Okay, so you'll see this in education. Math is racist, STEM is racist. So we're getting away, I think Seattle did away with the gifted program because it wasn't fair for everybody to have it. And then they changed their graduation rules. You don't have to pass a graduation exam anymore. It doesn't matter what your grades are, it doesn't matter what you know, you're out of there once you're a senior, okay? So think about a government that is dumbing down the population on purpose, okay? And then putting everybody towards a job where you're just a cog, you're just a button pusher. Okay, there'll be very few people that go to college to get higher education to do the jobs that will be like building the robots, okay? But it unlocks your creativity. I finally found an explanation because now you have all this free time to sit around and have a guy playing guitar. If you can look on the World Economic Forum's website, most of their videos are on Facebook. They've got one that's like the era of human robots is over. Okay, saying like all this time we have been the robots. We've been out there toiling and working. Now it's time to let the robots do the work so that we can just be human, which is not what the Bible said. The Bible says that you were created to do good works that He preordained for you before you were born. Okay, so once again, you see we're fighting the curse of Adam. You don't do the work anymore, you let the robots do it. And you don't do what God created you to do, but what the World Economic Forum thinks you should do. So unlocking the creativity just means you have time to sit around and paint and play guitar and all this stuff. Okay, so another part of their plan for education is called personalized adaptive learning using artificial intelligence. So it goes like this. Everything is digital, everything is online. And I believe this is gonna come with one of the lockdowns. We can't lose another year of education. We've got to get everybody on this system. But that was my opinion. I'm trying to tell you every time it's my opinion besides what I read. Okay, so, but they do say the plan is to get everybody on the same digital education. And if your kid is doing really good at math, their curriculum will change and direct them towards this job. If they're doing good at English, it'll direct them towards this job. But 95% of those jobs, I believe, will be IoT jobs. Basically, it's communism, where the government decides what you'll do. So it doesn't matter if you want to be a doctor. If your kid wants to be a doctor, the government thinks he's good at this, so they're going to, starting in 7th grade, start steering them towards that. Okay, this is going to freak you out. If you're not already freaked out. That's a commercial. Here we go.
红色是表示你的能力显示的很高，
Teachers at this primary school in China
蓝色是走时了，
know exactly when someone isn't paying attention.
白色就是你可能跟网络还没有连接好。
These headbands measure each student's level of concentration. The information is then directly sent to the teacher's computer and to parents.
Did you see the red light, the green light, if they're paying attention or not paying attention?
China has become a global leader in artificial intelligence. It has enabled.
Okay, you already saw that. It reads your brain waves to know what's going on, okay, if you're paying attention or not. So if you start Googling those devices, they're everywhere. You can buy one now. Those were made by an American company. That's an American product that they're using right there.
Rebecca, the Stadia school system has the mouse that measures the child's
No way.
motions and the chair that measure their movement over.
Okay, I'm totally Googling that when I get home tonight. And I'm glad you brought me back on track because I forgot to tell you about the schools. I got onto the next thing. There's so much. Okay, so thank you for telling me. Across my feed came an ad, a sponsored ad saying, look at this school in Gulf Shores, they have this modernization project, it's so awesome. Okay, so I called around to find out what was the deal with the STEM, and the guy, finally I found somebody who, and nobody knew about it, like, what is this, I don't know about this. It's not the main function of this company. Anyway, so finally somebody told me, I got the actual sales guy that was going around to the schools, and he told me that the STEM part is that the kids could shadow the developers and watch them measure how much energy they're saving on solar. Okay, it's back to this carbon is a bad word. They're learning from an early age how to track this stuff and what they should use and what they shouldn't use. Okay, so the sneaky part is it's happened in Gulf Shores, Huntsville, Athens, DeKalb. It's a whole bunch of them. Okay, and so they've gone in and they have said, and this, you think that it should be Alabama Power, an Alabama company,